I feel like I'm doing really well in my life as a man. I'm detaching, I'm taking care of myself, I've been reading books, right? I'm watching these videos, I'm watching these calls, I'm here doing my men's work. And it seems like my wife's attitude is getting even worse. Why is that happening? I thought this was supposed to get better if I do this work. We're going to talk about that today here on the C Note Show with myself, Jeff Allen, and Miss Cynthia Kruse. As you know, Cynthia and I have been doing this work for a long time now in private practice for about 7 years, 8 years, working with men full time and about relationships, about marriage, and how to lead in marriage with Mojo like a king because she wants safety and inspiration and leadership. She wants to feel safe with you and you want to avoid mistakes, and that's why you're here. Not only is relationship a science, but it's mostly an art. Loving and being loved is an art, and that's what Cynthia and I believe in. We teach the Kingly Life Path framework and level 3 of deep conscious intimacy if you've seen our stuff. Our last call was about connecting with your wife in 30 seconds. So after this, you can go back and watch our previous video. We have lots of YouTube videos. And today I'm detaching, but my wife's attitude is getting even worse. So, Cynthia, we get this question a lot, especially in the first, let's say, month or 2 or 3 months of a man doing this work. He's reading books, he's starting to go to the gym more often. He feels like he's not asking her as many questions. He's just trying to be pleasant when he sees her, sort of day to day. And she still wants space, or she wants him to know that, hey, this doesn't fix everything. And it seems as though she gets pretty damn nasty at times, and he's wondering, why is this happening? So he's stepping back in a healthy way, hopefully, right, guys, and doing his own stuff, but she's getting angrier and pushing and lashing out. And what is that about, first blush? And we're going to get into this today, please.
Yeah, I mean the bedrock behind her behaviors can have a lot of different layers to it, but at first blush, what's happening is you're changing the energetic dynamic between the two of you, and the feminine does get a lot out of kind of pushing back at someone or blame. It actually gives her a sense of feeling stable, if not grounded, in the midst of a storm, emotional storm that she's in. So if you're shifting that, she's losing something that's making her feel more stable, something that's making her feel some sense of power. Or there's also the uncertainty she's been having all this time is kind of bleeding out, kind of like magma bubbling to the surface.
This isn't this what she's wanting though? Didn't she say she wants space? She's unsure about things. That's what most women have said to the men that are here. So I'm giving her what she says that she wants, but now where's this coming from?
There's like two sides to that coin. There is I think there's the human nature side where we are clinging so hard to something that we want because it's going to fix how we feel inside. It's going to fix how she feels inside. And so suddenly when she's receiving that, she's receiving what she thought was the fix. Suddenly she still feels the uncomfortable emotions. And on the other side of that, change is scary for the feminine. And there might be moments that the things you're doing differently kind of wash over her like a relief, like taking a big drink of water, like, oh, God, this feels so much better. And she doesn't trust that yet, either from the current relationship dynamics or even way in the past. And so that can be really scary for her and kind of put her into hyper alert.
Yeah, certainly. So let's unfold this even more. What is detachment? Psychology Today, this article, Detaching with Love is Good for Everyone. Distancing yourself from other people's problems isn't selfish or cruel. These are just a few excerpts from that article. Detaching is good for you. You need to detach when you're so wrapped up in other people's pain and problems that it's negatively impacting your physical or emotional health. You're not sleeping or eating normally. You have headaches or stomach aches. You're tense, distracted, irritable, depressed, preoccupied, worried, and so on. Detaching reminds us that we can control ourselves. And when we focus on what we can control, we will begin to see positive results and our hope will be restored. Once we will once again feel empowered to change the things we can. Detaching is good for others. You may be wondering, isn't detaching mean or selfish? No, it isn't. We don't detach to punish others or because we're angry at them. Detachment is about self preservation. It's also a way to love others, even if they probably won't see it that way. If you're constantly hovering, worrying, telling them what to do, or rescuing them, they never have the opportunity to learn how to make decisions, solve their problems, and learn from their mistakes. When you do these things, you're creating dependency, which isn't helpful or kind. And we hear that from the men. They say their wives often say, I haven't learned to be on my own, or you've always controlled me. I chuckle because the stories get really nasty at times, right?
Yeah.
But she, at the heart of it, wants to feel freedom. She wants to feel more control over her own self. Maybe she wants to make her own money now. Maybe the kids are older and she feels like she missed out on some of her life. A lot of let's make this even harder. A lot of what I just said are sort of traditional masculine type of energies. I want to make money. I want to feel control. I want to feel freedom. I want to kind of live it up. I want to feel like I can do whatever I want. Less so of what are traditionally feminine, of relationship and closeness and nurturing and expression. So what is it about a woman in that phase that is more likely to show anger, what we're talking about today? Why is she more likely to be this way, even worse, have an even worse attitude when he's detaching, if those are not really what her maybe soul is wanting? Most people are not aware in relationship of the polarity of masculine and feminine, which we talk about. And simply, that's what attracted us to each other in the first place, right? How are we being when we first met? Often not showing all of our own selves, often not understanding our own selves. And through this challenge, through this time, and you doing your work as a man, that's why you're here. It's why you're watching this. That's why you're studying and reading and doing the stuff, is because you want to grow. You want to learn more about yourself. You want to learn how to be peaceful and joyous and contented within your own self, not all over the place or retreating to the bathroom at work and crying in the bathroom at work because your marriage is in fucking shambles and you don't know what to do, which I've been there. Right. So if we as men are trying to be wanting to be more grounded and peaceful, we would think, well, isn't she wanting to fulfill more of her nature, her soul, what she truly desires? And but it doesn't seem like that's what's happening in this phase. It seems like she's just pushing away and wanting to feel free and away from the family, away from the marriage connection, which is not what we knew of her,
Mhm.
not what we've known of her heart. So what's that about to begin with?
Well, I think there's a great falseness that women can fall into. They imagine that their freedom, their being in their own masculine, will be such a relief from just the feelings of being a woman. And so they imagine that freedom is just I don't have to feel attached. I don't have to feel like I owe anyone anything. I don't have to feel like I'm constantly kind of the river. My water is going into your riverbanks and I'll truly know myself. And the falseness of that is once she gets to that side, and if she doesn't have then your masculine energy to keep pushing against, all of a sudden that energy is going to feel really lonely to her and it's not as satisfying, and there is going to be a craving in her heart for the connection. The thing she must grow through and the thing that she has to take responsibility for is it feels vulnerable for her to be in her feminine. And so the more you show up in that grounded masculine place for her, the more uh, she might even feel her own vulnerability to that, her own softness, her own wateriness. And so she's either trying to prevent herself from doing that, or the newer kind of vulnerability even scares her a little bit.
Yeah, thank you. We definitely want to get into your questions, and I have a couple that men emailed me recently too. Doesn't everyone, and isn't that horrible to feel powerful by blaming? That's a good point. One of the tests, right? One of the challenges, guys, is to not be pushed over in the face of someone else's upset. And if it's our 2-year-old child or the family pet, the dog isn't happy right now, or the cat vomited on the carpet, we usually don't take those things very personally. It's like, okay, I'm gonna need to clean this up, or my 2-year-old wants candy and it's not time for candy. And you're able to handle that pretty well. But when our wife points and blames us for these horrible things, we're not ready. We're not ready for her to stand up in the canoe in the middle of the lake. We feel like we're going to go over, or we are tipping over. We do feel like we're tipping over. And so the blame, I don't know about you guys, but my mind will go to places of blame at times. I'll blame whatever's in front of me. I'll blame my lack of time. I'll blame the demand on my work schedule. I'll blame the neighbor for putting the fence too close to our property line, or bitching about the leaves that blow over into the, like the elk that walk through our yard every year and shit all over. There's a lot of things that I can blame. And when our woman blames us, we really think it's true. And most of the time it's not really true. And let's flip the table over a minute. I don't want this to seem like, one person's all good, another person's all evil or anything like that, because we all have these same blaming thoughts, is where I'm going with this. What is it that when a woman's getting worse? So if I'm getting better as a man, if you're watching this, you're here and you're getting better as a man, more grounded, and she seems to not actually like that we're getting better,
Mm.
where might that come in this idea of blame for you, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just go back to you kind of saying, isn't this really horrible that there's this human condition? And yeah, judgment and blame can create a dopamine cycle. And I think any of us, but particularly women, if they're feeling a great deal of depression or anxiety and they don't have their own kingly eye, their own masculine frame to move themselves out of that. They're going to go for what is, how can I improve the emotional state? How can I feel better? And she can get almost addicted to the cycle of resentment, not because in her highest self, that's what she's always wanted relationship to be, but she's kind of stuck in that pattern that resenting you and blaming you gives her something. And I think seeing that for what it is an incredible opportunity as well to not play into that, but to also recognize that we all can fall into cycles of habitual dopamine thought processes. And because we can easily fall in, we can also fall out of them.
So how do we fall out of them? Like, I say play checkers. There's a one-on-one client I'm working with. It's been about 4 months, 3, 4 months. His wife moved out right when he found this work. His wife had moved out, moving towards divorce. And now they're back together again, sort of unofficially. Sex is happening, family time is happening, but they're still living apart. And she said, I don't trust you to talk me into coming back, is what she told him, because you're good with words and because you're a salesman. I don't trust your words, and I don't want you to try to talk me into coming back, is what she said right away. And he's not been pressuring her. He's been following this work. We've been doing one on one work. He's in the group. And she brought this up again a couple of weeks ago. And he told me that he sat there and listened and kind of nodded, was paid attention, but literally did not say anything back to her. Just allowed her to say that out loud. He kind of just saw it as clouds passing in the sky, or playing checkers, right? She just made a move on the checkerboard and he didn't need to say anything about it. So when a woman says, I don't trust you, and she's verbalizing these things and he stays quiet, confident in himself, not in fear, but like, oh, these are clouds passing in the sky and I'm here to listen. I'm not going to try to fix this or take it personally necessarily, even though it's about me.
Yeah.
What's going on there for her?
Well, there is an element of, I would say, that's positive that she would actually say that out loud. Uh, it's positive that she is attributing, hey, I know you have skills and I know I can be easily swayed by them. That's a really big level of self-awareness in her. And for her to say something, even if it's like crushing and not fair and confusing, and then to be met with something that you and your masculine presence do totally different, than women can, like holding the space for that, but unflagged by it, unflapped by it. It gives her an opportunity to actually feel the trust, almost as if she's pouring some red paint on the mountain and then recognizing that the mountain doesn't budge, nor is anything taken away. It just is. And that's a really incredible, humbling, deeply reverent thing for that deep feminine spirit to feel, whether or not in that moment she can recognize that. Maybe it takes her a year to recognize that, but that's something she can't experience anywhere else.
Let's take a look at the chat here again. One challenge I'm finding is to balance detachment with support. She wants to empty her basket often, which I'm sure makes her feel better, but then I think she skips away happy that she feels better. Okay. And so what about that as a challenge for you in particular? Do you feel sort of used by that, or how's that a challenge for you?
I think it means that like she gets a lot of what she's looking for out of our interaction, right? Like right now she's not looking to be super intimate. She's feeling a lot of fusion in our lives. So we do come together. There's like the Alison Armstrong basket emptying ritual that we have,
Yeah.
which is generally sort of one way communication. And then when the basket's empty, I think she's kind of like, oh, wow, I feel better. Like it's not malicious. She's not shitting on me or anything, but I hold the basket. She empties into the basket, and then she's kind of like, oh, that was great. Now we have too much fusion. So I think it's just balancing that like detachment and the availability of the basket holding calibrated to like where we are in this process.
Sure. You said now there's too much fusing. Is that the concern?
Well, I think what's tricky is, if I'm there to hold the basket all the time, she never has to feel the discomfort of like me not being there to hold the basket. And so then she gets to empty her basket, and then she gets to sort of like that part of her feels good. And then so the things about our relationship that she doesn't feel good about, then she sort of sits with those because she's been able to empty her life basket, all the things going on with her work and her friends and her family with me. So that stuff's all been heard. But I think it means she can then kind of focus on the negatives in our relationship or something. I'm not sure. I'm not articulating that well.
Yeah, it's okay. Let's explore this. So many pieces here, right? One is hopefully you're not just dropping work or whatever it is you're already doing to be immediately available like she has you on fucking call or something. I don't think that's the case for you. So just to say that out loud for every man, you're busy. You're a busy dude. You only have certain windows of time in your day to even listen to her in the first place. I hope that's the case. And then some men feel like she just vomits for 3 hours at a time or some very long amount of time, nastiness, and they just have to sit there and take it, which I don't think that's the case for you in particular, right? So I'll say that out loud. And then there's the concern of, well, if I'm only putting weight on one side of the scale, me listening to her and being comforting to her, and there's nothing on the other side of the scale, like attraction and polarized interactions, and me inviting her into intimacy and saying, hey, Friday at 7 o'clock, I'm looking forward to fucking your brains out. I want you to wear those black lacy panties that I want, or maybe something like that. Maybe it's not quite that direct, but if you're not putting weight on the other side of the scale, yeah, you're just being her male girlfriend or something, and that's not what you want. So there's lots of pieces there. I totally get that. Which one of those am I hitting the nail on the head in any one of those ways in particular?
Thank you for simplifying my explanation. It's just like, she's getting her needs met, the needs that she wants right now, right? She doesn't want intimacy necessarily with me. So she's getting her needs met, the needs that she's willing to have met in our relationship, but I'm not getting mine. So I
Okay.
think
And
that's
so
where, and I think I'm repeating a problem here that I've said to you a million times. And I think your answer is going to be like, spend less time around her, which I just need to do.
Well, that's not the only thing, and that's not what I go at first. So if I'm putting 100 pounds on this side of the scale and 0 on the other side of the scale, the fucking teeter totter is going to be pointing into the sky, right? So maybe don't put 100 pounds on one side of the scale with your availability, the amount of time. You ask her, we won't get into the weeds about that, but if all you're doing is one side, that's trouble. You're
Yeah.
if you're not saying, hey, on Friday I want to have intimate time with you, which obviously you've been working with us for a long time at this point, I'm going on a year at this point now. You can also have Saturday morning coffee, which we've talked about many times. And you, at 6 o'clock in the morning before the kids get up, you have coffee and you look out the window every Saturday morning. And this particular Saturday morning, you say, hey, I have a concern. I don't feel like my needs are getting met in our relationship. Okay. Now, that's a huge statement. And you don't start with that. Okay. You start with, hey, Friday, I want to your brains out. Or, hey, Friday, I want to go for a walk with you at sunset. And if she says, ew, why would I want to do that? Well, that's part of our relationship, getting together, intimate time. It's important to me. Intimacy is important in my relationship with you. And she says, well, I don't want that right now. I don't want anything to do with you right now. Okay. She's I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but I wanted to talk about this today. So let's press pause and we'll jump over some other angles on this. That's great. If she says, ew, gross intimacy with you, don't ever bring up again. And that's misogynistic and patriarchal. I'm just throwing words. Stop mansplaining to me. Just throwing words out. I don't want to wear those panties ever again. Don't ever bring it up again. That's gross. I told you, give me space, leave me alone. Oh, by the way, can you listen to me vomit about work? Hey, well, no, I'm not interested in a one-sided relationship per se, but I am a human being that cares for this woman and does want to, not just blow up the whole bridge necessarily, blow up the whole relationship necessarily. But if your needs aren't being met in the relationship, guys, and she's actively saying, ooh, gross intimacy, get away from me, then she's demoted herself in your relationship. If she's saying, I don't want anything to do with intimacy or your needs or what you care about or what you think or anything about you, if I don't want anything to do with you, she's demoted herself in the relationship. She's not acting like your wife right now. And you shouldn't be treating her per se like your wife in this moment. You need to think about her in a different way. And maybe that's your girlfriend. Maybe that's you've started dating again. Maybe it's the woman who's living in the same house right now that wants nothing to do with you. And in your mind, you got to stop seeing her as your wife, so to speak, in this moment, because she's not acting as your wife. So let's talk about that. If she's not acting as his wife, any man here, if she's saying, ooh, gross, get away from me. I don't care about your needs. How dare you bring up your needs? What do you mean? All you want is sex, you misogynistic, like, okay, she's demoted herself in the relationship. And if the man thinks of it that way, energetically, what's a healthy way for him to see that? It's like, oh, damn, Jeff, demote. What does that mean to demote her? Well, what are you seeing? And Cynthia and I work with men together and on our groups. So what are you seeing that I mean there that's going to be healthy actually long term for the relationship? How do you see that?
Yeah, and I'm feeling in the moment, and I've heard on this call too how much it can feel like the feminine wants to gets away with using your masculine container and demoting her, or I would even say taking the third entity of the relationship and giving it more respect and more vision than that allows her to respect the energy that you give, your castle walls for her, your container, because that is a cornerstone of a woman, of the feminine, feeling polarized with you, to respect and honor your masculine energy, which she doesn't just get to take or have or assume. uh, I mean, there's every part of this that also includes her learning she can share with you, and that's good and okay. But in terms of that scale, what you offer is gold, and it doesn't just get to be given. The feminine also needs to show up for that space, for what you offer, for how valuable it is.
So she needs to show up in that space. Say more about that. How do you mean?
I mean, we could take that energetically, that when she gets to pour into your container, even if it's kind of the vomiting the day, that at the end of that, there's a feminine in her that returns. There's an appreciation. There's a softness in her. There's taking in that what you've done for her has been deeply appreciated. And I know that can be confusing in terms of how do I know that she's doing that, but that's part of her showing up, is the actually receiving what you're giving her. And sometimes when the scales are off and women just assume they get to have you, uh, the taking in what's being given to them isn't there, and that in itself can become an addictive pattern.
Well, we're all breaking old patterns. Yeah, that's why you're here. That's why I came to this work originally. That's why we talk about this as breaking old unhealthy patterns. Take a look at the chat. Yeah, there's support for you in the chat, certainly, as always. You guys are great. I'm enjoying the me that was hidden. Yeah, this weekend we talked. She said, it's only been a little over a month since we had the separation. What happens if these things I'm slowly seeing change come back? Like if you revert back, I would not be able to deal with that emotionally or just at all. And then I said, I hear that, I feel that, but what if I don't? She was silent. We talked then about kids in the week ahead. Come on in. One thing, so I love the way you're seeing this, the way you're approaching this is slowly having compassion for her. One thing to be careful of, and let me ask you about this, Andrew, is, we can't promise perfection, right? We can't promise that she's never going to feel XYZ kind of way anymore. So we have to be careful, because I think so you tell me, is she saying she doesn't want to feel some kind of way again? If she opens herself up and then she's hurt again, she just doesn't know how to handle that, or if she could even handle that at all.
So she really just doesn't want the main 3 or 4 things that she really honed in on that were like devastating to her emotionally to resurface. And she's noticing that, yeah, it's only been what, a month, 6 weeks, whatever. And she's noticing that, okay, he's, kind of been on his own, doing his thing. I'm noticing some changes, some more communication, some game plans that he's sharing with me, game plans he's sharing with the family, just kind of just, hey, this is my week ahead, just trying to be more there. And that was a big thing that she really, really struggled with, especially after we had our kid number 3. But then again, during kid number 3, I had one of my most stressful times of work, where I was at a job that required like 11 hours a day. So it was like, shit. So it was kind of a weird time anyway. But yeah, no, that's kind of what she meant. It's just like emotionally, mentally, physically, everything. She can't fathom or take the idea that that would ever come back. And she said, that's the part that I am most terrified of. And I just sat there and, during our conversation, most of it I was nodding and yeah. And I know it's not going to happen tomorrow where she's going to come at me and go, oh my God, let's just like run away and do all this. And she knows that too. But at the same time, I think she heard it though, because here's where I kind of liked it. The next day, we had a phone call about our kids and about something random. And she said, hey, I just want to tell you that I see what you're doing with your whiskeys and the bars and things, and I appreciate it. And I was just blown away that she would even mention that on her own randomly, because that's not something she normally would do.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of women won't say anything, and your wife is, and I give her props for that, for sure, right? For stepping outside of herself and praising you and seeing something good that you're doing. That's awesome.
But
And these are things, so you and I talked about, for instance, how your wife has felt betrayed at times because you didn't sort of tell her where you were going, and you were gone for hours at a time and she didn't know where you were. So she's felt abandoned through that, sort of betrayed through that. And for you, it was a pattern you saw with your parents. So, just wasn't a thing for you. It didn't even, yeah.
yeah,
You didn't know that it hurt her per se. And we all have these
correct.
kind of things where we don't know that we're hurting her, or she doesn't speak up. I can see half of the names on here have told me I didn't even know that what I was doing was hurting her, and
Yeah.
she didn't say anything. Why didn't she say anything?
Well, she said that. She's like, I've always said something. I've always said something. I was like, well, obviously what you were saying wasn't clicking. And she really honestly said, she goes, why did it take for us to just separate, for you to finally go, wow? I said, well, I think it was just because I took a step back and looked how I could improve myself, regardless of if you were around or not.
Yeah. And we all hurt each other in relationships
Yeah.
accidentally, right?
Yeah.
We think that everyone is doing the best they can with what they know, and we all accidentally hurt each other in relationship, and
Mhm.
that's not pleasant, but it
No.
happens.
You
So
know, and one more thing, then I can be mute. I had to say this a positive at the end of the weekend. So I had the kids all weekend because she's on call, and that's been normal since forever. Um, anyway, even when we were in the same household. But this weekend, it was almost like a wow. This time, this joy, there was just something that just opened that was like, oh, the kids were having such a great time with me. I was enjoying just not even really doing much. And then my parents took away the two boys for a little bit to our farm. So I had our daughter. And then there was a test the other night. She said, hey, after that call or after that talk, why don't you go hang with one of your buddies? And it's okay if it takes longer or whatever and you need to stay over there, I'll put my dad on standby to watch our daughter. And I said, no, you know what? I really appreciate you considering that, but I'm also going to tell you that I'm going to make good on that, and I'm going to come pick up our daughter when I said I was going to.
yeah, stick to your plans. Nice.
And she said, oh, well, I'm still going to have my dad on standby.
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah. Good for you. Good
fine.
for you for
So,
following through and sticking to your plans. Yeah.
so then I went to dinner. I went to my buddy's house, and I called her, told her, hey, I'm on my way back to your place to get our daughter. And she kind of was like, had this, what? What do you mean aren't you just still hanging out? I'm like, I'm coming back to get our daughter, like I said I would, so you could go to sleep and go do whatever you need to go do for your work. And then I didn't hear from her until the morning.
Yeah, it's simple. Play checkers, right?
Yeah,
Don't overthink,
yeah,
follow through on what you say you're going to do. It's awesome.
yeah,
Thanks for
yeah.
that. How do you communicate that she has to receive it without walking away? It'd be best to have a specific scenario, but when you say that she needs to honor the relationship as a part of her responsibility, just like we have our responsibilities to show up, and how do we communicate that she has to receive it? Well, in the moment, we don't try to force it, certainly. And you're not shaming her. You're not telling her what to do per se. But that next Saturday, when you have Saturday morning coffee and you say, hey, and this actually plays into this, man emailed me recently, and here's the situation. They had planned coffee, they had planned a little date, and she no showed him. She didn't show up because of work or whatever reasons, he says. So anyway, she didn't show up for the coffee date. And to be honest, it hurt a bit. I hung out in the kitchen for almost 30 minutes, then finally took the dog out. So I handled it well, he said, took it to the boardroom, which is one of the exercises that we teach, and made no reference to her for the rest of the day. Actually, I was a mountain lion with her throughout the day. So his higher self, his best self, right? He was relaxed, calm, didn't take it personally, was in his own frame. He goes on, I guess what I wanted to bring to you was that it did take me a while to process the situation. I fear that maybe I had seen her when it was fresh. So he's worried that she read on his face or his body that he was upset or something. He said, I may not have handled it well at first, I think he's referring to. How do I get to the place of the mountain lion or have that superior man mindset faster, quicker? Okay. So in the moment, it's disappointing. These are two different questions. In the moment, disappointing. She's not receiving, she's not honoring, right? And he's hurt by it. So two different pieces. And what might she actually positively respond to later? So let's say he waits till Saturday. He says, hey, this on Tuesday, we had a coffee date and you didn't show up, and that was painful. I didn't appreciate that. Okay. And let's say she gets angry, right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm busy at work. How dare you blame me for this? See, this is the kind of thing that I hate about you, and just really. Okay, so how do I communicate as a man that she's not really stepping into her role in the relationship here? What have you seen be healthy and successful in this work that we do?
Yeah, and I feel it again, it comes to your incredible ability to create a container around a situation, meaning that you can bring words and voice to this. In terms of, let's say, the a wife who's just constantly vomiting and it never stops and that's all she wants to be able to do, is it's bringing awareness to like, hey, I really want you to feel relief after sharing this with me, and it feels like you never have any relief from this feeling, and I want to know more about that. So you're really inviting her into a physiological, what do you want to see in her? And
So say more about that. Why is that piece important? The physiological, the getting her embodied, to inviting her to be more embodied. What is it about that?
because you are creating then the riverbanks for her emotion to flow. So let's say she's in an addictive pattern of responding a different way. Uh, or her whole life she's just, I just got to verbally let go of this, and I just I get a momentary release and I just got to keep going. You're actually creating a way for her to create a new habit, a new pattern, even if she tells you in the moment like, ah, that's ludicrous, I could never, whatever the excuse is. You've said it in this masculine frame that you and you alone have, and you're already starting a new awareness in her brain of what can be possible.
Okay, so part of this is leading with our own selves in the groundedness that we talk about, so that we can be present for her and ask her to do that within her own self. Yeah. Okay. And what did you want to say from there? Where, well, what if she thinks I'm just being an asshole if I demote her in my mind and I'm not as available, or I say, I would love to have intimacy with you, and she pushes away and therefore I'm less available? What would you say from there without walking away? How do you communicate that to her? What would you say is effective?
Yeah, well, thinking back to the missed coffee date, that's when, I mean, you want to evoke her chance to actually feel something real and authentic. But there is a time when, what we mentioned earlier, that what you give, your energy as a man, is gold. It's valuable. And if the boundary that needs to be set is for this third entity of space you're creating, it is really important for you to use that grounded presence to say what you want for that third entity space, what you want from experiences together. And it's not so much directed at her, like, I'm setting a boundary with you, you need to do this better. It's this other that you're protecting no matter what, and you won't budge on. You won't even let her own dragons torch. It is that important. It's the grail that you'll hold with her infinitely, and or with any other woman you have a relationship with.
That's awesome. Really well said. All right, we're out of time for today, so I want to give you the takeaways. And if you guys have more questions, definitely see you on next call. Reach out to us, post in the forum, email me. Absolutely. Check out more of our stuff, greatmenmovemountains.com. And here's the 3 takeaways I want to leave you with today. Number 1, take time for yourself if you're upset, and ask yourself, what can I control? Because trying to change her, trying to force her to change is beyond your control, and you're only going to frustrate yourself in that way. Number 2, like was said earlier, if my wife weren't around, what would I do next? As the man I want to be, as the mountain lion, as the higher self, as the better self man, if my wife weren't around, what would I do next? And number 3, it's okay to be facing a difficult chapter of life right now. And I want you to know that it's okay if this is challenging. It's okay that money or parenting or relationships or sex or connection is challenging. That's okay. These 3 things: take time for yourself. What would I do next, regardless of her? And it's okay to be facing a difficult chapter of life right now. Cynthia, what would you leave us with today, please?
There was a gentleman who asked me the other day if his own aliveness affected his wife, who's pushing against him right now. And I kind of want to go back to this idea that when you break and change patterns of just habitual response, uh, especially in that frame that you have of, if she wasn't around, what would I do next? There's a fire that you tap into, or at least I've experienced around you, that is so powerful and alive and captivating. And you can't help but change dynamics in that energy, because it's because of who you are, because you are a man, because you do these things with such honor and heart. and forward thinking. It has powerful results, even just how you're holding this thought, this being inside yourself.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate you guys. See you next time.